Well, there we go. Welcome, folks, to the wearej6.com weekly live stream. We are very excited to have everybody here. As you can see, we have a power-packed panel for you today, and there's a lot to get through, so we are going to jump right into this. We always make a point of starting with prayer and just an honest, simple acknowledgement of Almighty God and an invitation that He would join us on this panel, because without Him, we're truly lost. So with that, let's pray. Heavenly Father, we're so excited. We're so grateful. And we're really just humbled by the amazing opportunity you have given all of us in this moment in time, and particularly in this country, which is, we truly believe, is a gift from you to the nations of the world. And it is an absolute privilege and honor to be an American citizen and to be part of this nation and part of that opportunity. So God, we take that very seriously. We are very aware right now. We're very concerned, actually, God, and you tell us to come to you with your concerns and cast our burdens on you. We are very burdened by the suffering, the injustice, the devastation that has happened, particularly to J6 patriots, J6 former defendants and their families, along with all the related issues that affect our country and all of our citizens. So, Father, we come to you in humility, just to ask for you to participate, for you to be here on this panel in this moment. Would your Holy Spirit please fill all of us in our conversation, uplift our thoughts and our words, that we would be respectful, that we would be speaking the truth in love. And God, we ask you ultimately for victory, because we are not here just to chit chat, but to be purposeful in the mission that you've called each one of us to. And we ask you for victory in this mission of restorative justice. We're so grateful to you for all of these folks and their time, and for everyone watching this and for their support and courage. We ask you to bring us to be strong and courageous as you commanded in your power, and it is in your name that we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right. So to start, I just want to summarize for everybody. We have a couple of folks new to the panel. And of course, we have new folks every week as the stream grows and as the audience grows for We Are J6 at wearej6.com. So what is that? And we're gonna play a clip here momentarily of the greatest president in American history, who said something quite remarkable. In fact, I think I'm going to play that now, and I want you to pay attention to what President Trump says here. And you're going to think that I'm telling you to pay attention to a specific line at the end about compensation. And of course I am noting that. But actually what I really want you to pay attention to is how he talks about J6ers. It's fascinating. Watch.
Essentially never treated so badly. And as you know, I let them out with pardons. I know you were very happy. I watch your show all the time. You were extremely happy about it. And plenty of other people were too. People don't realize this whole movement that we have is just it's a very inspiring thing, what's happened to our country. These people are incredible people. They were treated so unfairly, so horribly. Some of them didn't even go into the building. And the judges, the system, the hatred, the vitriol, the prosecutors, the way they wanted to destroy these people would go in and they'd be so proud to go before court, and they'd have a good lawyer, and they'd walk out of court like devastated the way they were treated, devastated, given years in prison. No, but I took care of them. I said I was going to, and I did.
Is there any talk of, because they lost opportunity, they lost income, any kind of compensation fund?
Well, there's talk about that. We have a lot of people talk about it. A lot of the people that are in government now talk about it, because a lot of the people in government really like that group of people. They were patriots as far as I was concerned. I talk about them a lot. They were treated very unfairly. You know, the thing they show is they show a group of 1,000, whatever it may have been, 1,500 people down. What they don't show, you never see the crowd that day. It was the biggest crowd I've ever spoken before. It went all the way to the Washington Monument. It was so wide, you virtually couldn't see anything else but people. They never show that.
So this is amazing, because President Trump is highlighting a couple things here. He's highlighting, number one, that the truth of January 6th in terms of what it was happened and what was involved, that has not been honestly reported. And most of the country doesn't have an accurate understanding of what that is. We all basically know that. We've been talking about it ad nauseum for months and years. But the other thing that President Trump highlights is that people don't have an accurate understanding of who we are, right? Who are we? Who are the people that showed up on January 6th? That's why we called this We Are J6, because we understand the importance that the country knows who we are as people, as citizens, as your fathers and mothers, brothers and sisters, neighbors, and your coworkers, as we say. So those are really important things. And at the beginning of this year, when President Trump did deliver on his promise to clear the decks and repudiate the constitutional obliteration of the J6 witch hunt, which was a huge victory, and most of our effort and conversation was centered around pulling the country together to make sure we did the right thing in that sense. President Trump delivered on that. And as soon as he did that, we said, okay, what's the next step? Because there's a lot involved here. And that's where we came to discuss, that's how we formed this group. We call it a strategic alliance. And it's a First Amendment Association of Americans. That's all wearej6.com is. We invite anyone who is a former defendant to register at wearej6.com, so become part of the family, the community here. And anyone in the whole country who supports liberty and justice for all can also register at wearej6.com as an advocate. So we can have these conversations, and so we can pursue what President Trump was talking about, determining the truth, exposing the truth, and sharing the real facts of what January 6th was and how it happened, but also showing the nation who we are as people and as citizens and as victims of what happened, because that's a real thing that we need to address. So our mission statement at We Are J6 is that we are resolved to deliver restorative justice through victim recovery and government accountability. So our live stream today, we're going to have two sections, two main components. The one is victim recovery. And we're really excited to have joining us one of President Trump's longtime close personal friends and attorneys, Peter Tickton, who's going to discuss with us elements related to victim recovery. And then, of course, we're also very excited to have Steve Baker at the Blaze and Lori Mills from California, my old stomping grounds in LA, to participate with us in considerations of the government accountability part of the equation, particularly when it comes to some very concerning issues with FBI corruption. So we're going to dig into that as well. But Dr. Gold, would you kind of give us some background as far as kind of where we sit right now and what you think, the legal conversation revolves around?
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. We love our Saturday noons Eastern time, and thank you so much for the guests who are joining us this week. Absolutely. It's always good to just remind people that we really are trying to do two things. We are trying, it's obviously victim recovery and government accountability, but underneath that are the parts that everyone can play and the parts that other people can play. So what role can you do and what role can other people do? So there's been talk for months, right? What is going to be is there going to be some kind of civil recovery? Is there going to be some kind of compensation back for all the financial and additional harms people suffered? And is there going to be looking at what the judges did? Are judges going to be held for impeachment? Those who've joined us week after week have heard me talk about that pretty much every week. Are there going to be congressional hearings about this? Are people who've really been victimized going to have their stories out? So there's a kind of a legal construct that we are going to talk about a lot today, what the possibilities are. By the way, I know a lot of people still have questions about class action lawsuits and filing with lawyers and stuff. It's bigger, more complicated than that. We're doing our best to keep you apprised.
Right.
But the other part is something that's directly within your hands, your control, which is to help the nation understand the truth of the day. One of the things that went wrong that day was they blocked people's social media. So a lot of people take, cell phone videos, pictures wherever they go. That was all blocked on social media. So really people saw what I'm famously known for saying, omission bias. We never said that there weren't some people climbing scaffolding and doing things they shouldn't do. What we protest was that the 99% of people who didn't do anything, who were just physically there, and all of that media was suppressed. So we have a huge uphill, mountain to climb, which is to actually show people the truth of the day, and then the truth of what the government did to fellow Americans. This is where everyone gets to play a role. This is why we have set up the opportunity for you to tell your story. Look into the camera, follow the directions that John Strand has sent you in the email. If you didn't have it, you sign up again at the email. We are J6. It's hello, it's info at We Are J6?
Yep. Register at wearej6.com and you'll get our automatic emails, and you can always send us an email to info@wearej6.com.
Because we want everyone to do these videos. We envision a wall of videos. There's more than 1,500 of us, right? So we'll take what you turn back, follow the directions. Where you turn back, we're editing it, we're making it, your story really compelling to the American people. You can't watch these vignettes of stories, which we keep to about 5 minutes, and not be emotionally moved. So follow those directions. That's something that's directly within your hands that you can do. As a lawyer, I'm telling you, it's going to be very important. The public pressure, when you sit down to negotiate, the public pressure that both sides feel shapes how the negotiation unfolds. That's something that everyone here can influence. So again, it's communications and it's legal. And I guess I'll stop there for now.
And as far as it goes with the legal, Dr. Gold, we're really excited to have Peter Tickton joining us. And Peter, I want you to share with the audience your perspective on this. What's interesting is that we met Peter this year and have been discussing a lot of things related to not just litigation, but the total landscape of what the January 6th issue involves, and who the players are. And of course, the players would relate to a lot of people in government positions and a lot of political headwinds and conflicts and things that those folks have to manage, as well as all of the difficulties that each J6er is dealing with in the midst of their own personal lives and the community around them, the incredible effects of defamation and the toxicity of J6, which of course is still being, a war still being waged against us by many different factions, even though we won a big initial victory on November 5th and the President Trump administration has done a lot of great things and strong things to start out of the gate, but there's so much more to be done. So there's a lot going on with that. And we have actually sent an email to We Are J6, to the audience of folks that have registered, specifically to the defendants. When you go to wearej6.com, you can register as a former defendant or as an advocate. So the defendants, who are J6ers themselves, we communicate with you folks, and we've alerted you to the work that Peter Tickton and his attorney group have been doing. They've been investigating the situation and they've been actively involved. And so, Peter, go ahead and share your perspective. I think, what we see right now is that it's not so much an issue of, there's going to be a class action lawsuit and you need to sign up for that right now, or it's this class action lawsuit versus that class action lawsuit. I think it's more of a broader conversation of understanding, what the political landscape is and what the various options are for navigating this territory.
Peter.
Do we have you, Peter?
If you want to share with the group.
You're breaking up, or I'm breaking up. Yeah.
We can hear you.
Back on where I'm connected better. Okay, you can?
Yes.
All right. So first of all, we've been meeting with people, and I can't get into any details about who we've been meeting with or what we've been doing at this point.
Sure.
But I can tell you that first things are first. So one of the problems that we know that are happening, and when I say we, this part of it was mainly Mark McCluskey, who has been. I was there, but he was the one that was on top of this particular issue that I'm about to talk about. There's a lot of J6ers that are on no-fly lists. There's veterans benefits that are being deprived. There's terrorist watch lists. There are the 4S or the Quad S, I think they call it, on the boarding passes that you get in the airport. Okay. This is within a week or so, this should be completely eradicated.
Wow.
All right. So, yeah. yeah, this is
That's a big deal.
And that is a big deal, and that was for that we have to thank Mark McCluskey, because he was really the one that actually brought that one home, and that's being taken care of right away. So if anyone within a week or so, if you're still having a problem, then email me. My email is very easy. It's my initials, PT, like Papa Tango. Okay, PT Boat, PT Barnum, PT anything, PT at legalbrains.com. Okay, it's very easy, very simple. Just email me if this is still going to be a problem for you. If you're not off these lists, let me know and we'll get you off those lists. Okay, so that's the first thing. Thank God we were able to achieve that. By the way, we're not achieving these things with resistance. We're achieving these things with very cooperative people that want justice to be done here. So I want you to understand that, good things are going to come through. I just can't get into the details about them. I don't even know. We haven't worked out the details yet. But these things are going to be coming. Just be patient. It's not going to be here tomorrow. It's not going to be here next week. It's not going to be here this month, but it's coming. Okay. It all takes time. And that's about all I can say. I have a couple of, by the way, what we did here in terms of those things, that isn't just for the people that signed up with us who are our clients. We're doing that for everybody. There's no charge. When you send that email to me, don't worry. It's not like you're going to have to then pay me any money for it. This is just something we just need to get straight as soon as we can. So this is something we're doing for all the J6ers with no commitment, no requirement for you to sign any papers, nothing. Okay. So don't be afraid. If you're on these lists, I mean, we know of situations where people have, finally gotten through and they get to the gate where the plane is leaving from, and then they have to go and have actually a strip search sometimes. So, I mean, this is just horrendous. I know
there's at least 3 victims of that on the stream now. We
really?
we know from personal
that's
experience.
over.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That was very surprising to the people that we were talking to, that it was still not cleaned up, and it's getting cleaned up.
Well, that's very good news.
So,
and Peter, your description of the approach there, I think, is very consistent with the alliance here. We are J6, as we've always said, is a free association alliance of folks just connecting for conversation, ideas, and coordination and executing actions. We want to take action, but everyone's welcome. There's no commitment. There's no conflict of interest, or there's no issue as far as being a part of the We Are J6 community and participating in these efforts for restorative justice. That does not preclude you from any other legal interest or effort that you're potentially pursuing, or any other group. On our website at wearej6.com.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Do we still have you, Peter? Dr. Gold,
yeah, I hope so. You can hear me all right?
Yes. I thought you had said something. Go ahead.
I'm here. Okay, you can hear me?
Yes.
No, I hadn't at that point, but I can tell you this, that, there are different things that need to be done and that we're involved in. So, obviously compensation is a huge part of it, because there just has to be, and that's understood and recognized. That's going to happen. But there's more than that. And one of the important aspects of this is that we need to get half of this country who think that J6ers are bad people. They think that J6ers are responsible for the deaths of 5 police officers on January 6th. I mean, we all know. I know I'm talking to the choir here. I know that or preaching to the choir. I know that everybody that's on this knows the truth, but you'd be amazed at how many people don't know the truth. And
Exactly.
so that's going to be also a major effort that's going to be made to get the story out there, get the truth out there as to what actually happened.
Right.
I don't know what to call the J6ers. I don't know what to call you all, because I'm not a J6er. I am a J6er, but I wasn't there. So I'm not legitimately a J6er. But for 9 months after J6, Donald Trump had me marshaling the evidence regarding J6. So I've watched hundreds of hours of horrible things and understand those things. I just saw that Donald Trump's now going to put out he's ordering an investigation into Ashley Babbitt
Yes.
and her death, and that yes, because I noticed that that can I talk about that or
Yeah.
or
That's related to government
or are we
accountability,
just
which
kind
is
of
where we're going to head next.
Am I limited?
No. Peter, we want to hear your perspective.
Okay,
We have
well,
different people on each week, so you have your own perspective.
okay, so Ashley Babbitt, the killing of Ashley Babbitt is very, very peculiar. Okay, if you watch the videos and watch them, first of all, I personally have friends that are members of SWAT teams, and I don't know any guy or gal for that matter. I don't know any women in SWAT teams, but I don't know any of those guys that, when you meet them, the word steroid doesn't come to mind. Okay, these guys are all built, okay, and they're big and they're strong. If you watch the tapes of Ashley Babbitt, you got these two skinny little guys that are standing there, supposedly SWAT team members, okay, and they're standing there by the partition, and then they leave just at the right time, so Ashley Babbitt can go into the window. She's shot by a police officer. If a gun is aiming horizontal, usually the bullet goes where the gun is aiming. And even though there's a recoil, okay, there's always a recoil, but it's where the gun is aiming where the bullet goes. His gun was aiming horizontally, and she shot up in the upper right hand, in her, supposedly shot in her shoulder. We don't know for sure if that's what happens. Then she falls down onto the ground. And anyone who's ever had experience with any kind of emergency situation knows exactly that what happened there was extremely peculiar, to put it mildly. I'd say impossible. That nobody would get down on the ground with her, talk to her, tell her, hang in there, you're going to be all right, or clear the area and have somebody there. But they're all standing around as though they're talking and having a conversation. And then the two SWAT team members, I have another video of them where they're actually off to the side. Oh, and the whole scene, when you're watching it from John Sullivan's, he was the one that shot the movie, okay, the film, which played first where? In the Ukraine, in one of the Ukrainian TV stations. It played there first, and then John Sullivan, where did he go? He went to the Ukraine, and that's where he was for a while after that. And we also know that running around the building, you might remember, there was a guy, you might have seen one of the videos with a 2x4 where he's breaking out a window. That is my information that I've received, is that fellow actually had face recognition and is a member of the Ukrainian army. So we've had, very peculiar things that happen on at this time. We also have videos, thanks to Millie Weaver, who is one of the most remarkable people that you'll ever meet. But she and her husband Gavin, they have actual videotapes and provided videotapes of meetings that were going on with members of Homeland Security and other NGOs where they were planning the invasion or the intrusion or whatever you want to call it of the Capitol building on January 6th. And this plan was underway in September of 2020 before the election. even. So, this was pre-planned, and people are saying that, you've had the accusation thrown at us that it was an insurrection, and the fact of the matter is that anyone who, I think most of us that are here know that that's true.
Um,
Yes, Dr. Gold.
Was
so I want to, I'm sorry, Peter, the
an
audio is cutting out
insurrection,
a
but
bit.
it wasn't the insurrection by. Yeah, your pictures are all disappearing, and now you're
No,
back.
so
Okay,
I'm going to jump in.
all
The
right. You can hear
internet
me though.
doesn't, we can hear you, but Peter, the internet and the audio, it seems a little bit off, a little bit delayed. So I'm just going to kind of jump in. I think one of the things that's so interesting to hear from Peter is how interested President Trump was in getting the facts surrounding J6. He was so interested in that he brings in one of his most trusted people. Peter's known him for 1,000
Since high
years,
school.
and so he delegated to him.
Do that.
I know, I always say that when it's a really long time, but that's a really big deal. In other words, this was absolutely on the president's radar screen, as he needed to know the facts, and there's no way he was trusting somebody other than someone he knew really all of his life. That's an unbelievably important point. Also note, Peter knows, and people in the administration know, that our objective is far more than a civil recovery fund or a settlement. There's a lot of ancillary things that have to be addressed. He mentioned the Quad S. A lot of us don't know if we're on other government watch lists. A lot of us want to know, can we get a gun? Can we get our gun back? There's a lot of questions. Is there anything that the government can do to pressure Google, for example, about removing the hatred and vitriol and defamatory words that are attached to our names, right? There's a lot of government power that could be brought to bear on Meta, right? Let's say you could say, we're going to give these J6 defendants, we're going to open up the statute of limitations on defamation, but we're going to give you 1 month to clean up the defamatory words. You can't have insurrectionists next to my name, for example. That's terrible. And somebody should be able to pay, but individuals can't do that. The government potentially could. These are just things. I'm just mentioning that we know that the list is far broader than simple, bring a lawsuit. Like, it's so much bigger than that. I've also learned over the past few months that this is probably going to look like more of a kind of a group negotiation settlement for most people, although people will always have the option to bring individual lawsuits. We'll just see how it shakes out. And I want to just close with one thing that I was saying to somebody the other day about my work as an emergency physician. You can imagine, as an ER doctor, it's a high amount of adrenaline and frenetic environment. And sometimes a person would come in and the nursing staff and the doctors are running around. And good advice, don't just do something, stand there, right? We flipped the phrase, because doctors and nurses, if they jump in too quickly, imprecisely, they can make big problems for the patient. So I just want to remind people, because people are very worried, like, what's happening? What's happening? What's happening?
On the legal.
Give it a minute. I want people to know there's conversations going on, and we are aware of all of these big things. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Gold. Derek, I'm so happy to have you here. I just want the audience to understand that wearej6.com, it's a strategic alliance, like we described, that we started at the beginning of the year. And Derek is one of our founding 4 members of the steering committee. So we're always excited when he can drop in. And Derek, you're welcome to interrupt or interject any of your thoughts at any time. So don't be shy. Not that he is.
I'll just quickly say, you guys have been awesome, man. I've been so busy with life and family and everything. I'm happy that, honestly, John and Dr. Gold have really just kept this thing going, and I'm so grateful for that, and still grateful to be a part of this, and not just this, but the entire January 6th community. There's a special bond that's been created between all of us throughout this whole ordeal that us and our families have gone through. It's a bond that's never going to be broken. And right now I'm excited that we're going to continue that bond as we go and seek restorative justice for all of us. And I'm excited to be part of this group.
Amazing. So we're very grateful to have Steve Baker from the Blaze on with us. And Steve, as we are talking about these various repercussions with consequences, being on lists, and there's still questions about the J6er who was shot and killed. I think it was in Indiana or Illinois. at some sort of a traffic stop where presumably he was on a list and things of this nature. But when Peter was mentioning that a lot of things about J6 are unknown or reported dishonestly or just don't make sense, bullets going in the wrong direction and all these kinds of things, I think you have a pretty strong wealth of knowledge, having crawled through a lot of these kinds of details the last couple of years, as well as being a J6er yourself and experiencing some of that pain, persecution, and the fallout. So what are your thoughts about where we are right now on the government accountability portion of restorative justice? And we do have some clips related to the Steve Jensen story, but before we get to that, maybe just sort of an overview.
Yeah, I would like to see more coming from the federal government. Particularly, I would like to see real and actionable committee hearings that are not just bread and circuses for the masses or for the J6 community or MAGA itself, because that's what we got from Weaponization Committee over the last 2 years was just that. I'm not going to withhold anything that I feel like I can talk about, certainly not sources or anything like that. But the bottom line is that for 2 years, Congressman Jim Jordan ran these committees, wrote a lot of sternly worded, letters, as we like to talk about, right. And had these, very, very great witnesses on the witness stand. And it was almost impossible for Jordan's committee, the weaponization subcommittee, to actually avoid January 6th, though that was his directive. Now, I can say that with authority from a source right in his camp, that at the formation of the Weaponization Committee, he had no intention of covering January 6th whatsoever. In fact, he said, we're not going to address January 6th issues. But because January 6th permeated every aspect of government corruption over the last 4 years, it was impossible to avoid. And regardless of what the topic of his hearing was, it always swung back to J6 in one manner or the other. And so that was a little bit of a rant on purpose, but it is a thing I'm glad to hear that the Trump administration and the president himself are still concerned about these issues. A lot of people have been, on social media going, look, after the pardons, they've not cared about us anymore. They don't care. As you guys all know, there's several groups working on either class action lawsuits or something of that effect. I'm certainly a part of one of those through my own attorneys, but I am not actively following it. I'm not chasing that information down because it's just I got too many other things on my plate. Right. But I do have questions about how that will be accomplished. I'm pretty strong leaning libertarian. I don't want to see somebody from Kalamazoo that had nothing to do with January 6th having to pay for other people's restorative rights. So I really have questions about how this money is going to be redistributed if in fact something like that happens. And then how do you determine what the loss was among 1,600 defendants? I've said it over and over again. I don't other than the emotional and maybe even mental and physical stress that I was under during my time of persecution. I didn't lose my job. I didn't lose my family. I didn't lose anything. And in fact, believe it or not, I never got the 4 S's on my, on my boarding pass, which was a big surprise to me. And so then there were others that lost everything.
Right.
And so, is this going to be a blanket compensation? Is it going to be proportional? A lot of questions that I guess we'll let all the legal experts figure out. Yeah.
Steve, there's a couple things I just want to jump in here, and we don't know yet how it will look, but I know I and others have been thinking about this for quite some time. So one opportunity is to separate people into different kinds of categories. There are J6ers who, for example, were charged and indicted with the 1512C2. I pulled that one out directly because it's already been pulled out by the government as a complete shame that the DOJ did that. So that's already like one grouping of people. There's people only charged with misdemeanors. There's people who are charged with nonviolent felonies. There's people charged with violent felonies. So there are ways to kind of group people. That's one kind of overarching, but under that, Under that, there will be, however, some way or another, it will come out that there will be a table of harms. We've actually put that together, the We Are J6 group, and it's about 5 pages long. And everybody will be checking off, and there has to be proof, of course, of the harms they have. So there's the indictment, there's the FBI SWAT team raid, there was the Quad S, there was, you lost your business, there was defamation, there was, your judge said this, there was going to prison, there was home confinement. Anyway, it's a long table of harms that we have a lot of commonalities, but people have their specific situation. And then you kind of tabulate that up, and that becomes kind of a numerical score, if you will.
Or a matrix.
Try to keep things even. Because I will say that I do think the J6 community in general believes that the majority of harms, or I don't want to say majority, but a large harm came just from the indictment.
Correct.
Because once you were indicted, the public defamation, cancel culture, social shaming, loss of business to a lot of people happened with the indictment. So I do think most of us believe that. But I just wanted to say as an overview that there is going to be a way to get to the finish line.
That's awesome. I'm glad somebody has done that. If you guys have spearheaded that, congratulations and thank you. I'm most, as I said, I'm most concerned right now that we have myself, other journalists. There are congressional investigators, and there are other individuals that do incredible work on J6 behind the scenes. And there's a lot of meat left on that bone, by the way, until we actually identify who made that day happen in the manner in which it finally transpired. We're not going to have justice, and that's one of the areas where I'm calling out Congress to do the right thing and to get involved. It's going to take more than just President Trump being concerned about Ashley Babbitt or being concerned about restorative justice. It's going to take us really look. Our frustrations with Congress are legitimate. I'm talking about the GOP. I don't expect anything from the Democrats at all.
Yeah.
But there are high-ranking GOP legislators who are blocking, who are absolutely obstructionist over anything related to January 6th. And they do everything in their power to keep it out of committee. They do everything in their power to keep it from ever any type of law like this or restoration bill taking place from getting to the House floor or the Senate floor. There are active obstructions from the GOP.
And that, Steve, tell me if I'm wrong, but that seems likely to be connected to the fact that so many in the political establishment, the uniparty, as I think it's most accurately described, GOP or otherwise, so many that they have a strong vested interest in the status quo, right? In general, but specifically related to the issue that is now in the news, thanks to DNI Tulsi Gabbard, and the pretext for why January 6th even happened, which is election integrity and election fraud, right?
Yeah.
So I would suspect, and please comment on this, and Lori, you jump in on this as well. Like you're hailing still from Los Angeles, California, one of the empires of election fraud, and so
Yes.
right. So Tulsi Gabbard has said some very, very alarming and strong things, and we need to have more action following that. But the topic of she literally said, we have the proof. We are holding the evidence. It's in the files, Mr. President. You are going to be presented with this evidence in short order to prove, yes, election software, and I believe Dominion voting machines, I can say the word, were part of the matrix of fraud and abuse related to elections that affected many elections, but obviously affected one of the most contested and obviously rigged elections in modern American history in 2020. And of course, that's why people showed up in DC, as was their First Amendment right to protest on January 6th. And then now we're here. So these folks in the GOP or otherwise in the government blocking the pursuit of truth and transparency, which anytime someone is trying to hide information from you, it's rarely a good thing. And yet they have all their excuses for doing it. But I would imagine that's what it's connected to, their vested interest and even corrupt connection to aspects of election fraud. And that's kind of where J6 really started, right?
Yeah. Well, I believe we faced a color revolution, and I don't think it's over. In California, it's horrible. I ran as a state assembly candidate, and my own son's vote didn't show up. Even after we chased it, we've got mass mail-in voting. We have these machines. And elections are not safe and secure. And I think the Democrats' goal is to have a one party nation. And coming from a one party state, all I can say is our elections are not safe and secure. And I am really glad that Tulsi Gabbard is looking into this, because if we don't have safe and secure elections, we don't have a country. And, I'm also looking at the fact that recently, with the Save Act, for instance, where, at first it was, well, you don't think black people can't vote because they can't get an ID. And now they're transferring it to, well, women change their names when they get married. You know what? I would rather have a verified election than something that is unsure, or we will always have these issues where one side doesn't believe the vote and we're all election deniers. And where it comes to January 6th, people had the right to protest. And I think that's why I've been such a strong advocate for J6ers. I made it a point over the last 2 years to have J6ers on my show to tell their stories. And to top it off, and it's something easy that people can do in their own hometowns,
Mm-hmm.
go visit your movie theaters and ask them how much it costs to rent it, charge tickets for people to come, play the War on Truth, and try to get 4 panelists there to discuss their stories. But as Pastor Rob always says, a lie can't stand in the light of truth. So I think it's super important that we continue to tell the truth, no matter the cost.
Well said. Well said. Yeah. Steve, the pursuit of election integrity, I think, is also directly connected to the pursuit of truth and transparency on January 6th, right? They go hand in hand. So I'm wondering if, in addition to championing the current momentum behind Tulsi Gabbard's efforts to uncover this, that we would connect that with the government's responsibility to investigate and prosecute criminal activities related to January 6th, which of course happened because of those election fraud issues.
Everybody on X, particularly the J6 community at large, wants to see arrests and prosecutions and imprisonment of these characters that that made us suffer at whatever level. And that may or may not happen. Look, at the end of the day, and everybody's going to hate me for acknowledging this, most of them are just going to say we were doing our jobs. Nuremberg 2.0. And in fact, most of them were just doing their jobs, whether we're talking about FBI agents or what others. Now we have the comparative FBI agents, the whistleblowers, who said, no, I'm not going to allow you to take me off of a child trafficking case and go out and swat a grandmother for nonviolent misdemeanors. And then they lost their career as a result of that honorable decision. Whether we'll ever see mass arrests or prosecutions of the nefarious characters that participated in these prosecutions from beginning to end, I don't know. But as you probably are well aware, and anybody that's followed my work over the last couple of years in particular, know that I am actively still identifying the major players, whether it was in the courtroom or whether it was the people who actually lit the fire on January 6th outside the Capitol. That's why we identified Pelosi's fixer.
Yes.
Just 3 weeks ago in an article in The Blaze.
Aaron Black.
Aaron Black.
Great article, Steve.
Thank you. And that one goes much deeper, and we'll be rolling out more names and more of what was taking place that day. But there are things that we know from the work that we've done, not only my own personal investigative work, but also we are working with some really incredible men and women that are investigative. Well, they work for Congress. They work for certain committees, and they're investigators. And we're working now with another particular intelligence community office on some of these things, because as a result of us stumbling on them, and some of it's hard work, some of it's just pure accident, some of it's being in the right place at the right time, and then all of a sudden you get a clue and you chase that rabbit and you find out that there's such a thing as an Aaron Black out there, the kind of people who actually do in fact facilitate by paying ne'er-do-wells, provocateurs for their actions, even on January 6th.
Right.
And so because of what we have discovered, we do have some really important people, committee, agencies in government under the new administration that are assisting us in this process now, and we're sharing notes. And I think, guys, I think we're getting close to being able to tell America how this day really happened.
That's so important. I want to remind and encourage the audience and challenge them, actually, and all of us, even here on this panel. It kind of reminds me a bit of a parallel to the medical tyranny of COVID.
Yeah.
Right? Because we have Dr. Gold here with us, the founder of America's Frontline Doctors. And frontline doctors became this concept to describe both doctors and citizens generally who had a clarity about the basic common sense reality of what was happening and how it was propagandized and weaponized against us. And we held the line. We stood firm on that truth. And for a while, of course, we were completely canceled. Some of us were fired, lives destroyed, demonized, ostracized, etc. But we held the line. And now we are the truth tellers. Now the whole world has more or less been forced to recognize that we were right all along. And we paid a price for staying committed to that truth. But it was important, of course. And J6 happened slightly after that. But those of us, whether we are J6 former defendants ourselves or J6 advocates like Peter Tickton today and others who are fighting alongside of J6ers for the truth and to pursue the truth and have stayed committed to that, they are going to be recognized. We will be recognized as the truth tellers. So I just want to encourage people, don't give up and remain committed to how vital this is. I've seen chatter on social media recently about J6 is dead. We're tired of it. We just need to move on. We just need to move on. You're going to hear that a lot. Just move on is a euphemism for cowardice. Those are cowards who do not want to stare in the face the ugly, dark truth of what actually happened. So we absolutely reject cowardice here. As an American, cowardice is not part of our ethic, our culture. It is anathema to who we are as Americans. And if we allow for cowardice and proceed down that road, we will fail as a nation, and we will bring ourselves to our own peril, to our own destruction. So I just think that's so important to remember. Derek, weigh in here just on your perspective. There's, like Steve said, there's so much still going on and so much left to pursue and investigate. There's so many complications with Congress and the government, with some people that may be trying to do the right thing and a lot who are not. But as citizens, as folks watching and participating in We Are J6, as just general Americans, who are we? What can we be doing? And how do we kind of advance the battle in this next stage?
Yeah, well, one of the first things I want to say is I want to remind everybody, and maybe for those who maybe didn't know, maybe didn't follow January 6th throughout the whole process, at the sentencing of every single January 6th defendant, the government, while overcharging us, while over sentencing us, they said, well, we have to do this as a deterrence to make sure that this never happens again. I think that we need to bring that same approach in terms of us going to the government and seeking justice. For people who say that we need to just get over this and move on, no, we cannot. We have to move forward and hold the government accountable and seek justice as a deterrence to make sure that this never happens to you or your family or our children or grandchildren or anyone else in the future. This is so much bigger than us as individual J6ers or even the January 6th community. If we allow this to just go and be swept underneath the rug, what is to prevent this government from doing it to someone else again in the future? They already tried to do that. They started coming after the parents who spoke out at school board meetings and the people who were praying outside of abortion clinics. I mean, so they've already attempted to roll out this tyranny on a why they came to us with on a wide scale range. So we've got to fight back on this and hold them accountable as a deterrence to make sure that this never happens to anyone else. So that was the first thing I wanted to say. In terms of everything else, I mean, one of the first things you guys can do if you want to help us out would be to go to wearej6.com and sign up there to get the information as we move forward with this, as we can give you updates as we move forward with this, and then sharing some of the things on social and not letting this die down. Because once again, we're not just doing this for ourselves. I'm not going to lie to you. I am partly doing this for myself. There's a lot of personal reasons that I'm still upset with the way that I was treated and others were treated through this whole thing. But I'm also doing this because I don't want my children to grow up in a country where they're going to have to worry about who's in charge of the presidency or the presidential administration and them being targeted the way that we were. I don't want my children and grandchildren growing up in a country such as that, and neither should you. And so that would be my biggest thing is just continue to join us in terms of sharing out the content. You can follow We Are J6 here on X. I know I got a lot of people right now watching on X on my account. Go to We Are J6 on there and follow that account. Share that content out. That helps more than you could ever imagine. I mean, I think it's obvious. President Trump has shown multiple times that he personally reads a lot of stuff on social media. He listens to the base. We are the base. We need to let him know that we are not content with I mean, we're happy to have the pardon. I'm thankful. I thank God every single day for President Trump clearing our names the way that he has. But that's not good enough. That is not good enough for me, and that's not good enough to prevent this government from doing the things like this ever again. And that's where I'm coming at it from. So join us in this movement. Go sign up on We Are J6. Follow the social media account. Share the content out, and tell your friends and family. When you're going to church tomorrow, make sure just tell one person. If everybody just told one person, every week, it would really continue to grow from there. And really appreciate all the support, all the prayers. That there's been so many people in this fight with us from the beginning, before it was cool to do so. And really thankful for everybody who's been with us from the beginning, and those of you who are just now joining us now today as well. So thank you guys.
Amazing.
Can I say
Well said.
something about what he said, John? Do you
Yeah,
mind?
please go for it.
Okay, so, I truly believe that unless people are literally held accountable, they will do this again.
100% guaranteed.
They will do this again. And there's been a lot of talk about Congress doing things. And Peter, correct me if I'm wrong, all Congress can do is give a criminal referral. The one thing that gives me hope, minus Steve Jensen, is that Dan Bongino's there, that Kash Patel's in charge. And I trust those two. So I'm really hoping that we do have accountability, but it's got to be very transparent or it'll be weaponized. That's all I have to say about that.
Totally agreed. And on Derek's point, I just want to make the distinction that there's a huge difference between retribution, which is a controversial word, but I think appropriate, and revenge, right? So this isn't a personal revenge tour, but retribution.
You're right, and you're right.
I'm sorry? We were just rejoined by Peter Tickton.
I'm sorry. I'm having connection problems, so I'm not sure whether
we can hear you now, Peter. But yeah.
So okay, good.
Just to conclude that point, before
you're talking in terms of whether this would happen again. We have.
Go ahead. Do we have you, Peter? I can't quite tell.
I think my connection is bad. I know it is. You're all breaking up and doing the best I can. I don't know that my voice is coming out at the same time as I'm speaking, or whether it's delayed. I have no idea.
Yeah, we can hear you now. It was
okay. So in business, you hire people for what they know, and then ultimately you end up firing them for who they are.
Right.
And the first administration that Donald Trump had, he hired a lot of people for what they knew. And then ultimately he ended up, he ended up with terrible. Look at this, look at Sessions followed
Jeff Sessions, yes.
By Bill Barr. I mean, these people were put in place.
Yeah, unfortunately, the internet connection is not very solid, so we're
And
missing
that's
a
a whole
lot.
difference. So now we have people like Cash Patel.
I think, Peter, we're going to have to
Try to reset that connection. Yeah, we
Yeah.
could try to reboot that if you'd like, Dr. Gold. I think we probably want to play pretty soon the latest persecution testimonial video that we're helping people to create here at wearej6.com. Steve, I'm excited to get your reaction to this. And Derek, you've seen some of these, but they're just exceptionally powerful. So as you know, as we're continuing to discuss restorative justice, both victim recovery and government accountability, it's so crucial both that people around the country understand who we actually are, that we humanize these people because they've been caricaturized and demonized to a degree that's almost hard to fathom in this modern age. But also people need to know the facts, and what actually happened and how these people have been hurt and what the consequences are, what the current status of a lot of J6ers on the street, homeless with broken families and lost marriages. It's heart-wrenching. And each one of these stories is unique and individual and important. And we're really excited to share them with you.
Can I comment on that really quick too, John?
Please. Yeah.
I wanted to say that's another thing that you guys could really do to help more than you could ever imagine is you got to think. I'm blessed to have a big account on social media. Some of us are, and have opportunities to speak to the media throughout this whole journey to kind of get some things off our chest and share our stories a little bit. Every J6er hasn't had the opportunity to do that, and I can't tell you how good it feels to be able to share with the world a little bit of what happened to you and your family. It's a form of therapy, if you will. And so if you guys could share those stories and those testimonials as they come out and help get these stories out there, it would help these individual, J6ers who are brave enough to come forward and share their individual stories. It would help them in a deep place in their soul, more than I could probably ever explain to you. It would be amazing to help get these stories out there, not only because they need to be heard, but even just allowing those individuals to know that people are listening and people have heard their story. There's something, I can't put it into words what that does, but it is very therapeutic, to say the least. So if you guys, once again, follow the We Are J6 on X there and share those stories as they start coming out, and it would help more than you guys could ever imagine.
Absolutely. Well said, Derek. If folks are interested and willing to speak and share their stories, that's part of what We Are J6 is formed and to do. So we'd love to platform you even on a live stream. So you can engage with us on our Telegram group, t.me/wearej6. So just find We Are J6 on Telegram, and you can engage in the conversation there. You can send us an email to info@wearej6.com, and we want to have J6ers share their stories as well. But really, I think the most potent way to advance this mission and really expand the power and influence of this story is these persecution testimonials. They're really effective, and you'll see how powerful they are, and the multiplication, the force multiplier effect that we can have by everyone creating a persecution testimonial video, and help us to spread the word. We need all of you folks to be warriors for us. I forget if it was Steve Baker or Peter Tickton saying that, we're preaching to the choir, but more than preaching to the choir, we are exhorting the soldiers. This is the army here. And so we want to empower and encourage you to take action and be a soldier in this effort. It is a war. It is a battle for the heart and soul of America, and certainly in the pursuit of restorative justice. So you can engage in that, making these videos and encouraging others to do the same, because some people need encouragement. A lot of J6ers are hurting in many ways, including just the mental and emotional battles. So we want to support those folks, encourage them, provide them a safe platform and haven and a way to share their stories. And that's what we're trying to do here. So Dr. Gold, is this a good time to play
I was
video?
thinking that, yes, let's play a video now so people can watch. We can talk a little bit more after, but this is how we're going to change people's understandings. Everyone should share them widely. They will eventually, pretty short, in a pretty short time frame, I think within a couple of weeks, all be living on the website. Oh no, I wanted Peter to watch it. I wonder if he lost internet. Give
See
me
if
a
you can
second.
track him down for a second.
Let me
Yeah,
text
yeah.
him. Okay.
The persecution testimonial videos are currently being deployed. We show a new one each week on the live streams. So if you're on the live stream right now, please do us a huge favor. Retweet that live stream, of course, because that's a simple, easy, automatic way to help expand the message and the mission here. So the videos play on the live streams, but we will also be deploying them on social media. WeAreJ6 is on X, and it's also on Instagram and YouTube. And then we will soon have a library of these as they start to build up that we'll host at wearej6.com. And, we want people to see and know these stories and be impacted by them. We also want the country to learn about the scope of this, right? So 1,500 plus individual American citizens who were targeted, hunted down, dismantled, and destroyed by their government bit by bit, piece by piece. It's really, there is no precedent for this in our nation's history. It's shocking. And part of our mission with restorative justice is to correct the lies and establish honest, accurate history for the sake of our national heritage and the national archives of who we are and where we've been, because history is essential for us to learn from, lest we repeat it. So we're building a library, an archive of who J6ers are and what happened to them. And that will reside at wearej6.com and I think become very impactful and valuable over time. So you're part of making history in a sense as well, which I think is important and exciting.
I also want to say, John, I think that at least for myself, and I think a lot of us in the January 6th community, I feel like the historical context is important for all of us. And so like right now, as Dr. Simone Gold mentioned earlier, the media created this, this narrative, if you will, and it's up to us to share the truth and getting it all in one central location like that. I know that sounds crazy to think about this, and it should have never came to this, but there's a very high likelihood that our grandchildren will read about this in their middle school social studies books. Okay. I think it's important, at least it is to me, that we have a central database, if you will, of the truth about January 6th from our perspective, so that people in the future who are looking back on this and if they want to do their own research and not just listen to whatever the government's telling them about that, they can hear it straight from us. That is important context, at least to myself, and I think a lot of us in the January 6th community. So I wanted to throw that out there as well, that it's going to have huge historical context for the future as this thing unravels moving forward.
Couldn't agree more. I think it's actually a really critical point. It just kind of humbles me to consider that, and it inspires me. It pushes me on to keep pursuing this mission. So, Dr. Gold, are we as set as we can be to cue this up? And
yeah, I called him. He wanted to join, but he's not here, so I guess he's having internet problems.
Okay, and sorry, not sure how to.
I'll get this to him in a text.
Okay, all right. So we're going to go ahead and launch this video here as soon as I can cue this up. And we did see if I do it here. Yeah, we did show the cover here. So today's persecution testimonial is shared by J6er Richard Harris. I Want Accountability, it's titled. How appropriate for today's panel discussion. And let us know what you think.
Non-violent Jan 6 peaceful protester. Well, I lost 4 years of my life, 2 years behind bars. I didn't see the sun for 18 months. I was physically assaulted by police. I don't sleep much. I say there's some PTSD. I lost almost everything. My name is Richard Harris, and I live in Washington State. I was a recently pardoned Jan 6er. I was released out of prison on January 20th, 2025. I went to the Capitol that day, quite frankly, because our election was stolen. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. They stole the election from the American people. After watching our country burn, watching our monuments being destroyed, our schools being closed, our churches being closed, our small businesses being closed, and then they stole our votes. We needed to be heard. I don't like the direction our country was in. That's why I went to January 6th in the Capitol. I've had enough. I was a non-violent Jan 6 peaceful protester, as most were. Police started all the violence from what I saw, inside and outside of the Capitol. We were gassed, flashbang grenades on us. Inside the Capitol, I was gassed. I was beat. I was jabbed in the ribs by a police baton. The people were just trying to defend ourselves. The police started all the violence from what I saw. I had 11 charges. The most significant was the 1512 obstruction of official proceeding. We all know what happened there. I had 2 assaults on a federal officer charge. Those were completely bogus. Like I said, one assaulted me. I grabbed the baton because I didn't like being hit by a baton. That was an assault charge, just trying to defend myself. And another one, there was no video proof or anything of me even touching this police officer. Why? Because I never touched him. I was still found guilty on all of these charges, all 11. I took it to trial, Judge Nichols, a bench trial. I had no chance. None of us had a chance in the trials. 11 charges, 11 up, 11 down, guilty. The government wanted 70 months, and I ended up getting 41 months. I'll take that as a victory. I did about 2 years total behind bars. I had 2 years out on pretrial ankle monitor, pretrial drug testing, the PO officer stopping by my house whenever they wanted. Even though I was free for 2 years on pretrial, and I'm very grateful for that, I was not free, and it never counted towards my sentence. I did roughly 23, 24 months total behind bars for peacefully protesting the stolen election. The damage is done. Well, I lost 4 years of my life, 2 years behind bars. I didn't see the sun for 18 months because the place I was designated had no windows, had no rec yard. I lost family, I lost friends. Most people on my contact list stopped communicating with me, whether they believed the lies we were insurrectionists and terrorists, or they were just afraid of being monitored by the government themselves. I was physically assaulted by police. I was gassed by police inside and outside of the Capitol. I was beat by police. I was defamed in the media. I lost almost everything. All I have left is my dad and my wife. Other than that, I mean, that's all one really needs. I can't get a job. I can't board an airplane without, you guys know how it is, all that additional screening. I'm living off of my credit cards. I feel like a burden to my family. I don't sleep much. I say there's some PTSD. I have nightmares of the FBI kicking in my door. Even though that never happened to me, that's probably why I have nightmares, thinking it still may happen to me. I want accountability.
The American people need to see these stories of political persecution. Please share them widely and join us at wearej6.com to help deliver restorative justice through victim recovery and government accountability.
It's just so horrible.
One of the things I want to say about these videos is, we show a different one every week. And the point is to show the range of what happened. That's why we reduce people's videos to 5 minutes, because we want to get like the most heartfelt and just the range. Somebody said, I think Eric in the chat has said repeatedly that his tiny daughter was very traumatized by what happened. Just that piece of the story, that everyone has his little different piece of the story, right? So if you think about what you want to say, like one thing that happened to you, it could have been very small or it could have been really dramatic. It could have been isolation in prison, which is very dramatic. People understand that it's dramatic, but it could be something that people think of as quite small. The FBI, when they came to break down my door, they kicked my dog. I've heard that. And then my child was so traumatized by that, she was screaming. There's just these little vignettes that will connect emotionally with people who don't know what the truth is. That's what we're after, is that emotional truth of the
And-
day. So we show different ones each week because people have had different experiences.
And I think it's fascinating what Richard Harris shared in his video, that for him, one of the worst things that happened was something that didn't actually yet happen, but he lives permanently in terror that at any moment that horrific, violent government force is going to explode through his door, which it did mine and so many of ours, and it's going to tear his life apart. And people may not understand fully or think that we are not being realistic or whatever about this, but trust me, this terror is real and it lives over these people. And if you have not figured out by now that the purpose for January 6th and the purpose for so many things that happen in our government and in our world, which are not by accident, the purpose for them is to send a message. The purpose for them is to instill a culture of fear and silence and compliance. That's what January 6th was all about. And that is what it has accomplished to really disturbing levels and historic levels. And it's a big part of why moving on is the last thing we're going to be doing. But I think it's very profound. These stories are so impactful and they give you glimpses and different angles, like Dr. Gold mentioned, about the various things that people have endured, have suffered, have experienced. But in this case, it was something that hasn't yet happened, but it's hanging over his head. And hundreds, thousands of people live in this terror and this fear. It's still there. Of course, it's still there because the bad guys are still running around, in many cases, preening in public with no accountability for this. And that's a big part of what we're talking about when we talk about restorative justice, victim recovery, government accountability, and a national reckoning. So we need these things. And I think these videos are crucial. So
you could tell he had PTSD. I mean, you could see the pain in his eyes. And
yes.
no American should have to live in fear like this. No American should have to live in terror. I mean, what was done to him was completely unjust.
I just want to say, I got to get ready to go. As you guys know, I got, or John and
Yes,
Dr.
Derek,
Gold
thank
know, I've got 4 kids with softball and soccer games today. So I got 4 kids, 4 different teams today. But what I wanted to say is, anyone who's out there in the January 6th community and you feel that PTSD or whatever, just know that it's normal. And I say that because I think, whenever I first came out of prison and was dealing with that, I didn't know what it was. I thought there was something wrong with me. And I think it was through a lot of our X spaces and stuff that we were hosting at the time, and finding out that other people felt the same way that I did. It was the first time I was able to accept it and be like, okay, this is normal, because up till that point I was like, something's wrong with me. And that bothered me almost as much as the PTSD did, thinking that there was something wrong with me. And so I try to say it every time to people out there. It is perfectly normal. I'm not saying it's okay to feel that way, because our government should have never did this to us. But I do think it's important for people to understand that it's perfectly normal to feel that way. And I think every single J6er, and even family members of J6ers at this point, have some form of PTSD. So I just wanted to really hammer that home, that there's nothing wrong with you for feeling that. It's perfectly normal. So God bless you guys.
Thank you, Derek. Thank you for joining us. Well said. And absolutely, wearej6.com, is a strong, safe community and platform for all of you guys. And we just invite you to please join us and join each other, and really consider yourselves advocates, allies, and evangelize. It's really incumbent on every one of us to do our part in our respective spheres and circles. And just telling people about these stories, telling them that wearej6.com is a really special and important place to connect and to platform, and to pursue the truth, and to pursue restorative justice for J6ers, but also for that national reckoning and national healing for our entire country, because we do want to move forward, but we cannot move forward successfully.
Can I add?
Yes, Peter, absolutely.
Yeah, I want to just say that January 6th to the left was proof of the fact that there was an insurrection that was that had come about where everybody was violent and horrible and so on, and all the MAGA people. But the fact of the matter is, it's exactly the opposite. It's proof of the fact that our country was taken over for 4 years. It's proof of what had been was going on in terms of the globalists. There's so many things that are interrelated here, from the jab that people have suffered, that they could be feeling all kinds of emotions from once they realized what they had done to them and injected into them, to what happened to the J6ers and so on. These are forces of evil that basically took over our country, and we're taking it back a step at a time. And what you should understand is that things that may not even be apparently related to January 6th really are, because January 6th is so important of an element of everything that happened here. January 6th to them was another Reichstag that occurred. But if you can show that Hitler was the guy that burned down the Reichstag, then you've got proof of the fact that there was tyranny. And so January 6th in itself is proof of the tyranny that was coming about, where we were the last country in the world to be, and we're saved by a hair. We're saved by one election that somehow they didn't think they had enough power to be able to cancel. So we got that election and we survived it. And somehow, by some miracle, Donald Trump didn't get shot. By some miracle, we were able to get through this thing. I mean, he was shot, but I mean, he's alive, thank God. And the thing is that we got through that. Now you're looking at things like Doge, okay, and you're seeing what's happening now. But understand this is what you're seeing. Look a little bit into the future. Understand that phase one of Doge is find the money that's pouring out to the criminals that took over our country, and to that mentality and the people involved in woke craziness and so on. Understand that we're stopping the flow of the money that's flowing. But that's phase one. Phase two is investigate and take it up to where it belongs, to where the stuff stems from. And then phase three, which you're going to enjoy watching, and it will be curative to a great extent, is the prosecutions that are going to occur after this, because that's what's happening. So it's really three phases, and you're only seeing phase one. All of this is being addressed. President Trump has a personal concern to make sure that the J6ers are compensated, and this is going to occur. There's a very positive attitude towards J6ers on Capitol Hill right now. Maybe not among all Republicans, and certainly not among the Democrats, but the Democrats made one really big mistake, okay, which is that they lost the election. If you're going to cheat in elections, you got to make sure you never lose.
Right.
Because once you lose, the people in power are going to find out and trace it out and see exactly what you did. So they made one big mistake, and that is they lost. And thank God, because that's the way you've got. Those pardons aren't just pardons. The election wasn't just an election. It was a complete change of course for every one of the J6ers' lives. God knows how long people would have languished in jail for whatever crazy reasons they were putting people in there and treating them so horribly. It's beyond the pale. It's not as though they just got prison sentences. It's as though there was an edict from Garland or from somewhere up there. And we're looking for that, by the way. Okay, yes. This isn't going to go without, with a lot of forgiveness and maybe forgiveness, but not forgetfulness. And people are going to have to meet justice for what they've done. Okay, and just understand that just as sure as you got pardoned, there's more coming. There's more concern for every single one of you. Okay. And maybe, I don't know, maybe I can be an honorary J6. Maybe I could say for every one of us, because just watching all the videotapes and watching as much as I've done and being as involved as I am, just hearing the stories over and over from the things that have happened to different individuals, it's an emotional toll on even the lawyers that weren't there that day. but I will tell you, it's not something you can listen to and deal with and just brush off your shoulder at the end of the day and say, oh, well, it's not like that. What happened was tragic. What happened is the taking over of our country. And you were there on January 6th because of the taking over our country. And all of this happened because of the taking over of our country. And we're getting it back. It's not over yet. We don't have it all back, but we're getting it back.
And that's why we call J6ers J6 Patriots.
And we need to win in 2026.
Patriots. Well,
yes. Well said, Lori.
I want to share just before.
I will. Okay, I just wanted to say I'm also involved. I got an election, more than one election case underway. I'm involved in the election fraud that occurred, and I have good reason to believe that we're going to be paper, and we're not going to be looking at the voter rolls in 2026. And my understanding is that as much as half the people that are Democrats in the House may not be there if these voter rolls with what we're calling modified duplicates that are in those voter rolls, which are millions of voters. It may sound crazy, but believe me, they're in there. It's amazing how deep this all goes. But we're shoveling it out. We're getting there, and nobody's just sitting back thinking it's going to take care of itself. We're doing it. Okay?
I just want to
private sector people like me.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean,
no, Peter is fantastic. It's very encouraging to people to hear from you. 100%. It's very encouraging. There's a lot of chatter. People are very grateful you're here. I just wanted to tell you, in front of everybody, you probably a very devastating, minor little detail just to share with people. So I was, of course, put on the Quad S list, which was horrific. Somebody said, what is the Quad S? I said, just be glad you don't know what it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Peter, my minor son, who wasn't with me, was put on the list. Someone I worked with was put on the list. And his wife, these people, it was what, they said with McCarthyism, anybody that touched anything. It wasn't just J6ers. My children were put on the list. So this kind of evil needs to be rooted out, or we don't have a free nation. And the good thing is we know that, and we are aware of the big issues. I just wanted to share that because it's terrible.
Peter summarized it perfectly. It's the evidence.
Still on that list in a week's time. If you're still on the list in a week's time, or your son's on that list in a week's time, you need to get that to me and Mark.
Yeah. No. We were removed. Most J6ers, if not all, have been removed from the Quad S. I just wanted to share the contagious. It's like a cancer that spreads, right? It didn't just attack J6. TSA, Department of Homeland Security, went to people's relatives and coworkers who were not any way, shape related to J6 and put them on Quad S.
Violated
that kind of government cancer must be rooted out. How did they do that to a minor child? In my case, a minor child. There's probably other people. How would the bureaucratic processes in place?
Tyranny. You got a taste of tyranny.
Yes.
Okay. People think that it's okay, maybe if the communists take over, or what they call socialists, however they want to deal with it, or that the globalists should be able to take over this country. Believe me, it's not going to be. It's horrible. It's nothing less than horror. And you got a taste of where we were going. Believe me, you wouldn't have stayed free in the next administration if Kamala Harris if it were President Harris at this point. None of us probably would be free right now. Or we'd be very soon to be locked up.
Peter, can I ask you a question?
Okay.
Can I ask you a question?
What we saw in the last 4 years is just the beginning.
Yeah. So, Peter, you being an attorney and you looking into all of that, for instance, we look at attorneys like what they've done to Rudy Giuliani and what they've done to John Eastman, and the attorneys that actually looked into the original fraud, and they were destroyed. Their law licenses removed. And I do believe that this isn't over. by a long shot. These people aren't just going to roll over. So what do? We have to win 26 or we're going to be in impeachment land all over
Yeah,
again. But
not just them.
yeah, but what about the attorneys that
When
have
I have
lost their law
when I have a Democrat
licenses?
judge, I got to tell you, it's not just that. When I'm in front of a Biden appointee, God help us, or not all of them are bad. Okay, I don't want to say that because I don't want to paint them all with the wrong brush. But there are these nests of activist judges or liberal judges. So even in my cases where they're not coming after me that way, but if I get an opposing counsel in one of my civil suits, that opposing counsel very often will send the complaint of Trump versus Hillary Clinton, which I filed with my name on it, to the judge. Okay, and then show Judge Middlebrook's decision that dismissed it. I mean, it's an appeal, and we're going to come back, but dismissed the case and sanctioned us all. So so now so then we get the ire of these judges that are the ones receiving these things. So and then bar complaints from the judges. So this is not but frankly, the way I look at it, you can either live life on your feet and take whatever comes at you, or live it on your knees and not have any dignity. We don't have any choice. We have to do what we have to do.
Amen.
So if that were to come about, and if I were to get disbarred because of all of this or whatever, well, then that's that.
Right.
But there's a lot of lawyers that are just not afraid. And Rudy Giuliani, you mentioned him, and Eastman. You're talking about two more people that should be honored with the word patriot.
Amen.
Okay, because
Exactly.
they are. Yeah.
And they're exhibiting what I like to call.
Giuliani, by the way, was the only. He was the only lawyer with the brains as January 6th to secure evidence.
Yes, those attorneys are displaying what I like to call uncomfortable courage, and we need a lot more of that. But that's something each one of us can do in various ways. Peter, you mentioned that J6ers are currently looked on favorably by a lot of folks on the Hill. Of course, only in the GOP portion of the Hill, but nonetheless, that's encouraging to hear, and I think is an important point. So I just want to encourage everyone watching, listening right now. This is just the beginning. There is a place for you. You have a job to do here. There's a duty for all of us to dig in and invest in this pursuit of restorative justice. And part of wearej6.com, part of what we're doing is connecting everyone together, unifying this group and this movement around core principles, and holding each other to a code of conduct and a standard of honor, so that we can pursue the truth and goodness, pursue noble things in a way that the country can see and understand who we are and what we're trying to do and rally around it. Because this isn't just about J6, as we've discussed at length here. It's about many things that affect all of us in this country. But J6 and people who are considered J6 defendants, who are, of course, maliciously defamed improperly, falsely, as insurrectionists or domestic terrorists, or the list goes on. But part of our mission at We Are J6 is to correct that false record and allow the country to understand who we are. And we're starting to win that battle. So Peter just acknowledged that people in Washington understand and see us favorably, and we can continue to help develop and strengthen the truth of that understanding with the stories we share, with the persecution testimonial videos that we help to cycle and disseminate, and even these conversations, and just connecting people together. So I think that's important. And another thing that, Peter, that you mentioned that's important, Steve, I want you to weigh in on this as we close here, is government accountability. As Peter said powerfully, people need to be exposed. Investigations need to happen and lead to prosecutions. And I'm not saying everyone's going to get arrested and thrown in prison or anything ridiculous or unrealistic like that. But there were many crimes committed, and some of them do need to be honed in on. But this process doesn't happen by itself, and it's amazing how this works. But government actors don't generally hold themselves accountable, we've found. So this is not going to happen unless folks like ourselves and many more continue the hard work of being an American citizen, whether that's investigative journalism that Steve Baker is doing at The Blaze, whether that's really informative podcasts and conversations that Lori Mills is hosting in California, whether that's the legal efforts that Peter Tickton and other patriot attorneys are doing, whether it's frontline doctors and what Dr. Gold and the frontline doctors have done. All of these things represent that commitment. But on government accountability, and Steve, we won't cover it too much because we're about to wrap up here, but this story related to the FBI and FBI corruption specifically is a big component of the overall government corruption and weaponization that affected J6. And we're really concerned about what we're hearing. I'm just going to quickly display here. Let's see if I can line this up. Did I lose anybody? Let's get Peter back, and we're all here. But we had, headlines such as Miranda Devine pointing out that this recent appointment of Steve Jensen to the Washington field office of the FBI is definitely sending not a good message. It's concerning. And I bring this story up because it's hot right now and a lot of people are talking about it. And I understand there's different perspectives on it. But the main point is there's a lot of corruption. It doesn't root itself out. And the government doesn't really root it out unless non-government citizens kind of hold their feet to the fire. And I think we need to be doing that. So, Steve, what are your thoughts on this particular story and how we can kind of advance that overall government accountability issue?
Well, you probably have noticed that in the last week, I've posted a lot of thoughts about this particular story.
I have.
It was announced. It's now been over 2 weeks since the announcement was made internally at the FBI field office, or Washington field office of the FBI. And that announcement was sent out via email to about 2,500 of their employees. You can't send out 2,500 emails to somebody in a group message in DC and not expect it to be leaked. I mean, because out of 2,500, I mean, every possible political persuasion is represented, and people are going to view this announcement in different ways. Well, the first people to cover this story was the New York Times, and that was several days late. And they weren't even focusing on the story; they were just basically, the New York Times. It was a list of things that are happening in D.C. right now, and in the middle of that list, you go down 7 or 8 paragraphs. All of a sudden, they talk about this guy, Steve Jensen. He's special agent in charge down in Columbia, South Carolina. He used to be on the, one of the special, what do they call them?
SAC, special agent in charge?
No, he was SAC down in North Carolina, in South Carolina. But at the time, January 6th, and in the months following, he was on a particular task force that deals with terrorism. And by 2 days afterwards, he was full in on the implementation of and the direction to the SACs, the special agents in charge all over the country, of how they were going to prosecute J6 defendants. And when I say prosecute, I mean that in every definition of the word. It's like you can prosecute a war as you can prosecute somebody in court. But the point being is that the New York Times got it right by saying this guy has been appointed to this job, and the New York Times rightfully raised the question and said, that seems rather odd to us because this doesn't seem like this would go over very well with MAGA or with the J6 community. So they actually asked the right question. The next day, Gateway Pundit came back and claimed that through their own sources that what the New York Times had reported was quote unquote fake news. It was in their headline. And as it happened, I happened to have a copy of that email. Now, I couldn't share the email itself because in the context of the screenshotted image that I had, it would have led a good investigator to determine who leaked it. So I just transcribed the entire email and I posted that in a long X thread on Sunday. And so then it was the lid was off and everybody started choosing sides. So, as you know, we've got some people on the right, on our side, ostensibly, who are coming to Jensen's defense. And if not coming to Jensen's defense, they're saying we trust Cash, we trust Dan. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt in this, which is fine. Okay, myself and everyone at the Blaze, we gave Dan and Cash our full-throated endorsements when they were nominated. We gave them, applause and a standing O when their confirmations came through, when they took the job, when they were sworn in, and we still hope the best there. What we don't like and what we are not going to do is stop asking questions of government. I mean, that's just because we like who's been elected or we like who's been appointed doesn't mean that A, they're going to be perfect, and B, that the friendly press should lay down and not ask the hard questions. And the hard question in this particular incident right here is, why are they being so quiet about it? Why was this guy only announced in an internal email and not with a press release, as for instance Stephen Jensen, when he got the special agent in charge job in Columbia, South Carolina, one of the more two-horse capitals in the country, he had a press release. Well, he gets the top position at the Washington field office of the FBI and no press release, no mention. It wasn't until the uproar started and the controversy started and millions of people were sharing, retweeting, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and tagging Dan and Cash in all of these, X posts and threads, that they finally put out a little tiny message saying, yes, it's true, he has been confirmed or been appointed to this position.
So they do hear us on X.
Absolutely. But they still haven't addressed the controversy. Now, Dan Bongino, he's up to like 3 different tweets right now where he has said, it wouldn't be appropriate for me to ask you to trust us, but trust us. There's a reason behind this that you will all understand one day. I posted this yesterday. I have 2 sources inside the FBI who have contacted me and have told me that once the reason is known and is explained, that we'll forgive them for their silence and that we'll go, oh, okay, well, that makes sense. At the moment, it doesn't make sense. And, you've got an image of Julie Kelly up there right now.
Yep.
She immediately, right after our X thread, she immediately came to Jensen's defense. Initially, in the last couple of days, she's posted even on her Substack a video where she says, I can't deny it. I've looked further into it. Jensen's hands are dirty. And she's still, but let's trust the plan. All right. So, I mean, look, I have been accused of negatively portraying Cash and Dan in this situation, and I absolutely have not. In fact, I have purposely avoided that. But as I said, I'm not going to not ask the questions.
100%.
And it is disturbing that now we're 2 weeks and a day since the announcement of Jensen's appointment internally at the FBI, and we still don't have an explanation of why they're overlooking his actions, activities, directions, and leadership in the prosecution of all J6 defendants.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that trust is earned. It is not a default feature of having an office, even when we elect leaders into a position. So in addition to your point, Steve, that it's absolutely true and important for all of us, and particularly the press, to do their job, which is to ask tough questions and to keep asking questions and to keep spotlight on dark corners. But also people should realize, they should understand that there is a great reason for us to be skeptical and concerned and upset about particularly the FBI and how they have behaved. This is not like an abstract bureaucratic debate about how things are filed in some government office. Our homes were broken into and destroyed and violated. Our children were traumatized. So we have a legitimate vested interest in this agency and their, I'm going to say it because it's true, Nazi-esque behavior.
Yeah.
Which was shocking and something we've not really seen in this country, and we don't ever want to see it again. So I think, legitimately upset and concerned when I hear people say things like, well, you just need to be smart enough to trust the plan or understand that this is a complicated process and it takes time. We're not children. We understand that things are complicated and they take time. We also understand how the government has behaved for years and decades. And in the last few years, how they have really escalated their behavior to shocking levels that relate to previous dictators and genocidal regimes. So we have a legitimate reason, I think, to have our hackles raised. And I understand that they can't say everything right up front, and that makes sense, but don't expect us to just be pacified by that and go back to our corners, right?
We have a bigger problem with the FBI than I think anyone really understands, and that is that it is a culture that has to be changed. Now, many of the most expert analysts that follow the FBI, CIA, the entire intelligence community at large say that it cannot be reformed. In fact, that it literally must be busted up, like a antitrust lawsuit
Yes.
that busted up AT&T
Yes.
back 40 years ago. That this is the kind of action that has to happen. That has to
Mhm.
be divided into many other different departments, agencies, compartmentalized, smaller groups, so that they can then change the culture. J. Michael Waller, who wrote the book this year or last year, Big Intel. I encourage everybody to read that book. It's the most fascinating and exhaustive look at the rise of the FBI and the CIA, how they paralleled each other, what they were supposed to be doing different, how they both became co-opted, corrupted by the leftist agenda, because they both are. Well, that co-opted FBI, all those people are still there. All of them. And that's the other thing that's confounding about this, is that we're seeing some of them elevated into higher positions that we know that they were or are part of the problem, whether we're talking about Russiagate or we're talking about J6, and to see them now sitting at higher positions than they were before and appointed to these positions under this administration. So Cash and Dan have a big challenge in front of them, in that it's more than just the culture, as Mike Waller explained it to me in a long conversation I had with him a couple of days ago. He said it's a cult.
Yes.
And one of the reasons why these guys followed orders is going back to your comparison as a very Nazi-like in their tactics. That's what they do. And their ascendancy in the hierarchy, their ability to rise to the next position, the next pay grade, and then ultimately to be put in a position like a special agent in charge who gets actual commissions, bonuses for the number of arrests they made. In the 100+ year history of the FBI before January 6th, the FBI had never executed a SWAT raid on a single nonviolent misdemeanor case at all, ever. And then suddenly it was not only the norm, but it was expected, and it was applauded by the left. I mean, look, I only, it took them 3 years to finally decide they couldn't find a felony on me. But when they put the 4 basic misdemeanors on me, I certainly have written a lot of commentary on that. And I didn't get treated the way that many other misdemeanor cases were treated, as you know, just like yourself. Some of these guys, their doors were knocked down, the red dots were put on their heads, or put on the chest of their children and their wives at the front door in an early winter morning when these raids happened. And then you come to find out that, wait a minute, they did that for glorified trespassing. Are you effing kidding me?
Yeah. It's
Well,
despicable.
those guys are still there. Not everybody was a Steve Friend who said, no, I'm not going to do that.
Right.
And that's the biggest problem with the FBI right now, is that culture has to be dismantled. And I'm rooting for Cash. I'm rooting for Dan.
We all are.
But if they can't break it up and dismantle that part of the culture, so that, as you've all pointed out already, so that this never happens again, then it's going to happen again.
Absolutely. And a thing Peter mentioned about multiple stages of the Doge effort, I think is very pertinent here, that we need to identify and root out corruption and improper behavior. But then the next stage after that, or maybe several stages, but the end game of Doge, Department of Government efficiency, is to analyze what's here and what should be here and what should not be here. The whole idea is to shrink and in some cases abolish certain agencies and departments in the government because we don't need them. They are dangerous and destructive. They are unnecessary. And in many cases, they're unconstitutional. They are an improper use of government expenditure and power, particularly in the sense of the 10th Amendment, which is almost one of the most important and long forgotten aspects of our Constitution, is the concept of federalism or separation of powers in a vertical direction. Whenever we talk about separation of powers, everyone is thinking horizontal, the separation between the multiple branches of the federal government, Article 1, Congress, legislature, Article 2, executive branch and presidency, Article 3, and the judiciary. And as we've seen with the judiciary in Article 3, we have a similar cultural problem like what you mentioned in the FBI, Steve, where there's this culture of basically they're gods and they run everything and they have no pushback otherwise. So I think we need to address Article 3 as well. But as far as Article 2 and the executive with the FBI, I think we need a Doge approach to rooting out corruption and addressing that. And then we need to review, why are all these people here? What are they doing? And is that their job or is that the state's job? Right? And various other aspects to considering local governance and citizen-led government and what a true constitutional republic is and how it should be functioning. So those are deeper, longer questions, but I think it's an important point to just connect to what you mentioned about the deep, long-standing issues in the FBI and general government corruption that we're all being, we're all feeling and suffering the consequences of that, and continuing to discuss, where we go from here and how we address that, and how we try to correct problems that have built up and metastasized over decades and decades in this country. Folks, please, if anybody had any closing comments, jump in right away. It's been an incredible stream, incredible discussion.
Yeah, I just want to thank you for having me on. I have so much respect for each and every one of you, and I do hope to connect with you. I want to keep getting your stories out. I'm on X at Lori Mills, the number 4 CA42, and my podcast is Uncover Cali. It's on Rumble. I usually stream on X as well. I'd love to have any of you on anytime. John's been on before. But keep fighting, fight. This war is not over by a long shot.
Amen. Thank you so much, Lori. Peter, we appreciate your wisdom and expertise. Thank you for joining us. If you
Lori,
have
I'd love to appear.
Yeah.
I would love that. So maybe John can connect us
100%.
or
Yeah, we'll connect you, no problem.
Okay, great.
And Steve, thank you so much for your time and your continued hard work. Please keep us apprised of what you're learning related to these specific topics. And, of course, anything else that you want us to platform and help, we're here to support your work as well.
Thank you. I'm glad you guys are telling the stories of the individual J6ers, even if it's just in a 5-minute of, emotional vignettes. It is absolutely impossible for me to tell 1,600 individual stories. I can't do it. Even my partner in crime, my colleague here at the Blaze, Joe Hanneman, he's very passionate about telling the longer versions of the individual stories.
Right.
And he's very good at it. He has a heart of gold, and that's expressed in the stories that he chooses to tell. But we can't tell them all. We're like I can be, as I am right now, in the middle of this, reveal about Nancy Pelosi's fixer and all of that. Well, then my editors assign me something completely J6 related that I have to stop. I have to shelve it. I have to get on it. And every single day, if I showed you my DMs, every single day, I get more than one person, either from the J6 community or somebody else who has seen some other investigative report that we've done that wants me to investigate their pet project, whether it's local, state, or federal. It's impossible to do that. And so I'm speaking to the J6ers right now. I always say this, and I've been saying this for 4 years since I've been doing interviews on this topic, is that on January 6th itself, I saw 3 types of people. I saw bad people doing bad things. I saw good people doing good things. I saw otherwise good people doing some really stupid things. Okay. Those are the three major categories. And guess what? That's on both sides of the police line.
Right.
Okay.
Correct.
Now, with that as the kind of the closing setup here before I finish, is that J6ers are want to call themselves patriots or heroes or that, and there are certainly some that are in that community. There are some in the community that need to be more humble.
Yeah.
Because you were in the third category. You did stupid things. You made an ass out of yourself that day.
Correct.
You got drawn in to a battle you didn't show up for, but you might get more traction in your own recovery and in getting a job if you're more humble about and thankful for the pardon you got. And that's one of the things that I struggle with as we do pick and choose which story we're going to tell, is who understands their circumstance correctly.
Very well said.
Oh my gosh, I have to jump in, and I know we're basically out of time. Steve, that was kind of perfect. That was kind of perfect. And I hope I don't offend anybody listening. Not everybody at J6 was a hero. A lot of people were just kind of regular people. The day went awry. But I think the heroic nature of many people was that many people were there because they were seeing like democracy kind of crumble. And most people don't show up to protest. And I think that's kind of the mindset of people maybe who did some foolish things, was that they at least were there, they were present, they were trying to do something. But I more or less agree with everything you just said. One of the main purposes of We Are J6 is the long game, folks, the long game. There needs to be a permanent record of what happened. And these 5-minute videos with an emotional punch. Imagine in your mind, there's a wall, right? There's a wall. Right now that wall is virtual, right? We're going to put it all up on the website, and there'll be 100 videos. There'll be 500 videos if you all submit
1,000
them.
videos.
We'll get to all of them. We'd like to have all 1,500. The good, the bad, the ugly, the heroes, the non-heroes. But there's just this story, because this is really a story of America. What happened to the Japanese Americans in 1944, right? That was a bad chapter for America. But you have to look it in the eye, look at the truth, examine yourself, and then move forward in truth. That's what We Are J6 is to put the truth out there, the story out there. That's something everyone needs to do. Journalists like Steve Baker can't tell all the stories. Joe Hahnemann can't tell all the stories. But the stories should live so that people can watch them, click on them. Steven Spielberg did something similar with Holocaust survivors in the Shoah. He had thousands and thousands of videos of people who had gone through the Holocaust in World War II, and they live, and you can watch them at any time. This is like a micro version of that. So
like
that
Schindler's List.
Yeah, Schindler's List was obviously the famous movie, but he also put together a huge collection of anyone who had gone through that experience. He made it one of his life projects. I think it was like in the 90s or 2000s. And now there's a library, a massive library. I think it's maybe 250,000 testimonials. It's huge. Now, we're not Steven Spielberg, and this wasn't, World War II, but this is a micro version of that, which is there should live a repository of 1,000 or 1,500 videos where somebody can click on, that there's a third grader in 30 years from now can watch a video of Richard Harris and say, oh my God, we can never let that happen in America. Like, our goals are much bigger than just us. Yeah. This should be something that should be taught in the schools. And a good way to teach the world are these videos. So I want to encourage people, because there's not enough Steve Bakers and Joe Hahnemans out there and Joshua Phillips.
Yeah. And as Derek mentioned, he has such a heart for his children and for our future generations of Americans, that they understand the truth and that their freedom and constitutional rights are preserved. And that's part of the legacy that you're talking about, Dr. Gold, and the heart and mission of We Are J6. So you guys, thank you so much for sharing your valuable time. Thank you to the audience for being with us on this journey. Really want to urge you guys, it's so important to continue the work, the effort, the fight. We are in a fight pursuing restorative justice, and we need each and every one of you as a advocate in that fight. So please register at wearej6.com. Re-register. Sometimes folks miss the emails, but they have inadvertently click the unsubscribe button in the email, and then it takes you off the list. So if that happens, just resubscribe. You can always email us at info@wearej6.com, but make sure you continue to tell other people. Like Derek said, when you go to church, let them know that there is a group, that there is a movement, that there's a mission to pursue restorative justice and help to promote truth and transparency for healing in our nation, and that everyone can support that and help. They can really do their part. So wearej6.com, register, get the emails. If you are a J6er or know a J6er, please encourage them with just love and encouragement, and that there's a community for them, and help them to invest in creating those videos. We send emails out regularly with instructions to help you figure that out, so we can do that together with you. And of course, continue to visit us on the social media profiles and help us to share all those videos and those stories. So you guys, thank you so much again. We will see you next Saturday, every Saturday at 12 p.m. Eastern for the weekly live stream, and at wearej6.com. And thanks again to all of our amazing panelists. God bless you guys, and we will see you next week. May God bless the United States of America.
Thanks, John.